I enrolled in an ACU education degree because I want to become a teacher or higher to become known and leave a legacy. My major influences for becoming a teacher are my competitiveness and knowing that there is progression to be made in the education system. The main people that influence me are my parents and my sister, as my entire family are teachers. This is a great influence for me as my goal is to do better than all of them. I believe that I am innovative, persistent, and good enough at understanding people, which allows me to learn how some people best learn. My aims for education for everyone to be able to enjoy gaining an education while still being able to sculpt themselves for their future careers. Through my experiences, I have found that these were some of the most important factors for when I was learning to be the best I could be. I didn't like school growing up. I hated primary school, disliking school from year 7 to 10, and now I accept it more in year 11 and 12. I'm in two minds about my opinion of school, because my perspective changed midway through. So if I had started out with this one perspective that I ended up with, would that have changed my perspective the entire time? My perspective went from being overly anxious about everything, thinking I was stupid, only worrying about grades until I was unmotivated and unable to learn. However, once I became more relaxed, I thought, I'll do the bare minimum and I'll just see how I go. I ended up actually learning more because I spent less time in class thinking about how much I didn't know and more on what I was actually currently learning. This helped me because I became much happier and I listened in class and then I could join in class discussions. Even though I never studied, I never really felt overwhelmed. However, this was going at an expense. At a higher ranking private school which I was at, the culture and norms were consistently about purely performance based. This was both good and bad. Good because there was plenty of resources that I could use if I needed help, but it was bad because I couldn't really talk to anyone, which kind of ostracized me into being in the position that I ended up being in. As well as my change to approach in education, I also changed my friend group. Instead of just having a few main friends, I ended up going into a larger group. This ended up helping me because it meant that more students I knew were in different classes, which helped my education because I knew that I worked better in groups. However, my perspective in university has drastically changed. I intentionally try to stand out more to gain more recognition, which then I hoped would motivate me to do more work. However, this only partly worked. I do enjoy classes more now, but the work at home seems even more challenging for me because I hadn't done it for so long, and the ramp up of independence was enormous. However, the content was vastly more interesting, to the point where I wasn't just listening to the previous authors, but also comparing my life and creating my own opinions based on what they thought. One of the more prominent incidences I had with this was with Nell Noddings and her opinions about how education be used and how it is currently being used. She talks about making education a way to teach people about being good people and caring, instead of just training people for the economy. Topics like this are what actually allow me to reflect on my schooling and visualize how my education may have gone differently if I was under a different situation. My philosophy of teaching was sculpted through my experiences and ideals. The main questions that will form my philosophy of teaching is how do you imagine your future professional self, and what content should be included in the curriculum, and how should it be learned? I feel like through these subjects and those two questions are that stand out for my deliberation, for me, as I have strong opinions about school and belief in myself to make a difference. These questions were also talked about through many writers that I'll discuss, as well as how their opinions have shaped mine or collided to let me form my own. I'll also be looking into two major policy frameworks and acts to coincide with my opinions and values. These acts are the New South Wales Disability Inclusion Act and the Alice Springs Declaration. The first main question is, how do you imagine your future professional self? This is a question I've already thoroughly thought about prior starting to my ACU course. However, with my newfound knowledge, I, through learning, can look at my aspirations differently, and in some cases more realistic. A person who made me think about my future teaching self is Noam Chomsky, who discusses that what he believes to be the purpose of education was to make everyone conform to society. Then he discusses the idea of being fully educated, not just pigeonholing people into professions. This shaped how I viewed becoming a teacher, not just with conforming, listening, and following instructions and orders, but using my intuition to think of new possibilities and strategies. This was also influenced through looking at the New South Wales Disability Inclusion Act, which emphasises the more need for innovation in teaching sector. This act is all about allowing people with disabilities to become more involved in the community, allow for more choices, and allow them to become more independent. Now when I come back to thinking about my future professional self, I'm now able to think about how my skills and perseverance can allow me, with newly discovered opinions, to make a substantial difference. The second question was, what content should be in the curriculum and how should it be learned? This is a question I constantly thought about during my education, as I always felt like there was a way that it must be easier. Now through reading the goals of the Alice Springs Declaration, and specifically Goal 2, all Australians become confident and creative individuals, successful lifelong learners, and active informed members of the community, I can see how the legislation has already been put into place. Now it's just about fine-tuning. In that goal, the part of successful lifelong learners is a part that should be emphasized, as school isn't just about learning topic after topic, but learning about yourself and including learning how you learn. This was part of the curriculum that I believe I was missing in my early education that would have made my future education easier and less stressful. In the future curriculum, one of the most important concepts should be teaching kids how to best understand themselves, what they are best at, and how they can manipulate that into other parts of their education. This idea of personalised learning was influenced by the TV/UK Department of Education, where they discussed the pros and cons for such a system. The perspective was that it could be both beneficial for student and teacher, as the student gains more personal knowledge and feedback and the teacher has more autonomy.